Hello, History of Medicine students. This is Professor Bowen here with my Week 5 comment video. As you'll recall, last week in class we got an introduction to the field known as body studies, and we talked about some of the many different ways that social and cultural factors influence our conceptions of and our experiences of the human body. In terms of historical examples, we focused on ancient China, and we drew attention to the way that doctors there often made connections between the health of the individual body and the health of the body politic. The functioning of individual organs within the body was often likened to that of the various organs of a state, in a way that some historians believe was done to solidify and naturalize the rule of the Han state over China's population. This idea of the body as a universe can be found not only in ancient China, but also in ancient India, which we studied 2 weeks ago and are returning to this week in class. I kind of felt a little bit bad last week for not talking about India, but for talking about Greece again. And so this week in my comment response video, I wanted to help us see how the field of body studies can illuminate some features of ancient Indian medicine, some features that we perhaps have glossed over. Bodies, it should be noted, are fundamental components of all medical systems because conceptions of the body determine the way that doctors diagnose and treat illnesses. Looking at conceptions of the body, therefore, tells us something about how medicine is used, reactively, preventatively, and in what kinds of situations. As we can see, there are some commonalities with China. Premodern India was a place whose varied religious and philosophical traditions produced distinct and differently imagined bodies. One of the most famous and notable is the sacrificial body, which is recounted in the famous Hymn of Man from the Rig Veda. This poem talks about how the gods divided man to make the world, so that, quote, the moon arose from his mind, from his eye was born the sun, from his mouth Indra and Agni, from his breath the wind was born. From his navel came the air, from his head there came the sky, from his feet the earth, the four quarters from his ear, thus they fashioned the worlds. Other sources from this period in ancient India depict the human body as a universe, and the point is to show that each part of the body corresponds to an element found in nature. For example, moisture is water, fire is bodily warmth, wind is breath, and so on and so on. This is an early example of the body as an analog of the world, a kind of microcosm and macrocosm. The idea of body as universe is actually one that we find throughout all different kinds of early Indian philosophical and medical thought, where we see images of this universe as giant person, like the one you see on the screen here. This reflected the ancient Sanskrit idea that life in the human world is a reflection of life in a bigger divine dimension. As an example of this, consider a passage from the Charaka Samhita, where the teacher Purnisvasu asserts that, quote, this human being is coincident with the world. Whatever kinds of entity are to be found in the world, those same are to be found in the human being, and whatever are to be found in the human being are to be found in the world. This is just one of many different understandings of the human body set forth in ancient India. Indeed, pre-modern India's body discourse was rich and diverse, and in many of these traditions, there is a non-anatomical theme in body discourse. Perhaps most distinctly noted in images that come from Jainism, Jainist religious texts in particular. And among these, the most striking is that of the saint or the ascetic, who exists as a pure embodied soul, like the one on the right side of the screen here, and gives us a vision of the human body in its most negated form. There is literally nothing inside this body. It's completely empty. On the left, the image you see is the Jain world presented as a kind of colossal human. Different parts of the body corresponding to different levels of the universe that define the human, and also on the bottom, hellish habitations. Jain religion teaches that karma is a semi-material substance that is stuck to the soul and that weighs it down. People who shed all of this corrupting karma become an empty, pure being, as can be seen in these images like that on the left, of the right, of the conquering saint, where the body is just an absence. There is nothing there. Totally non-anatomical. Buddhist imagery also denies the importance of the body and kind of celebrates those who are impervious to injury or disease. In a certain sense, in the Buddhist tradition, the body is also irrelevant. It's not displayed as a physical substance. It is something that just experiences events or processes. And this is also true in tantric imagery, like the piece you see on the screen here, where, again, the body is portrayed in a non-anatomical fashion. It is just kind of the universe in miniature. It's the body as a kind of conduit for all these spiritual, mystical energies that are thought to awaken consciousness. Fundamental to tantric views of the body, as you may know, is the idea of the 6 wheels, or the chakras. They are arranged vertically within the human body, and this vertical axis contains tubes along which the breath travels from one to the next. This is also a non-anatomical body. It constitutes an instantiation of the universe in miniature. It's a conduit for mystical energies, again, that awakens consciousness. So what about Ayurveda? Early Ayurvedic physicians talked about the body quite a lot, but they also did not conceive of it in anatomical terms. All of the discussion about humors in early Ayurvedic texts refers to fluids and channels and the movement of fluids through channels. There's no discussion of organs, really, or specific places in the body that manufacture or disseminate nutrients. Consider, for example, an excerpt from the Sushruta Samhita, which talks about the 700 ducts of the body, which exist to carry around wind and bile and phlegm and blood within the body. The excerpt reads, quote, "There are 700 ducts. The body is irrigated by these, just like a garden by water channels and a field by ditches. And it is assisted by special contractions and expansions. Their ramifications are like those of the veins on the leaf of a tree. Their root is the navel. From there they spread upwards, downwards, and horizontally." Because of its non-anatomical focus, in traditional Ayurveda, the body was imagined to have both a physical side and a more cerebral, intangible side. On the physical side, you have the body that consists of 2 key parts. There are pure parts and there are impure parts. The pure parts are the 7 dhatus, the key physical elements of the body: skin, blood, flesh, sinew, bone, marrow, and lastly, semen. The impure parts of the body are those pathogenic substances, the 3 so-called humors: wind, bile, and phlegm. In a healthy body, as you know, these 3 doshas are said to exist in equilibrium or equal proportion. When that equilibrium is upset, illness results. and it's the physician's job to restore balance. What is significant in this conception of the body is that afflictions are not seen as isolated problems in the body. Rather, they reflect a more systemic problem, an imbalance of all three doshas. Moreover, these two parts of the body, the pure and the impure, they interact in a way that conjoins the material with the immaterial. As an example of this, consider semen. Semen is undoubtedly a physical element. However, its significance is kind of theoretical, at least in that it serves to help conserve a vital fluid that is imagined to possess life-giving power, that is, shukra. Shukra is thought to be fundamental to maintaining a healthy body, both physically and psychologically, but shukra is not something that can be measured or even empirically defined. Nevertheless, early Ayurvedic texts discuss means of maintaining high levels of shukra, with different prescriptions for doing so. Retaining this within the body is said to promote the internal flow of semen, which is necessary in order to help a person fulfill their gender role. That is to say, by conserving semen, a man is embodying masculine ideals. Semen retention helps a man achieve better balance and also preserves a most vital fluid. So here we have a pretty good example of how bodies differ from culture to culture, from medical system to medical system, and also how medical interpretations of the body and also therapeutic interventions into it are shaped by broader cultural attitudes, namely, in this case, gender. So, while the specific kinds of medical bodies in ancient Indian culture might have been different from those we found in ancient China, nevertheless, the same constellation of cultural variables influenced their production. All right, on that note, I'm going to leave it right here. Thanks for watching this video. If you've got questions about anything that I've said here, or if you just want to know more, please get in touch with me. I look forward to seeing you in our virtual classroom this week, and I'm really excited to talk with you about translation studies and its relevance for the history of medicine. Until then, I'll see you all later. Bye-bye for now.